still Nagios has the majority of users when it comes to monitoring. All right. So first of all, why do you need to monitor? Okay. Really, DevOps do not need to do anything in monitoring. Okay, don't need to set up anything in monitoring. You need to automate few of the process in the monitoring, which I'll discuss along the course today. But you need to understand this, that as being a DevOps, you would be working with developers, testers, you'll be working with operations, cloud computing engineers, and also a monitoring team. So in bigger organizations, there are separate team who do the monitoring of the infrastructure. Mostly it's going to be for the production server, or sometimes UAT or staging servers also. Monitoring servers will be mostly already set up. You may need to set up agents. Whenever you spin a new instance, you need to set up an agent, okay, which can talk to monitoring server and read the monitoring. You need to automate some of the process of monitoring. That is one thing. The next important thing is the feedback. So whenever we have talked about continuous delivery and deployment and all those things through automation tool, but once you do deployment, you also need to get the feedback from the infrastructure itself. Like after the deployment, is the server performing very well? Sometimes it happens that memory suddenly spikes up, or CPU is 100% utilized. So there could be a problem with the application or something else, okay, that creates that problem. So you may need to redeploy the code. The developer need to change something in the code and redeploy, and you have to redeploy it. So there are so many concepts that monitoring, so many jargons that monitoring team will talk with you. So you need to understand what do they mean, what the terminologies they're talking about, what does it mean. That is very important for a DevOps. Okay, being a DevOps, I did not set up any monitoring, but I'm a person from very strong infrastructure background. So when I was working as a systems engineer, I did set up monitoring with different tools. I did all these things, okay, but from the time I started working as a DevOps, I worked closely with monitoring team, but I didn't do too much, in setting up monitoring, okay, because that's not too much of our job, okay. But sometimes you need to automate their process. They'll send you requests, that you need to monitor, automate this so and so monitoring agent. So all those things you should understand, okay. And you can do all this automation through Ansible, Puppet, or Chef. There are plugins, modules, and cookbooks to do all those things. So we're going to talk about some monitoring principles first of all. And let's see, there are different types of monitoring people call, okay, environmental, network, server, blah blah blah. Okay, I'll tell you two difference. Okay, two types of monitoring majority. One is going to be the monitoring of your infrastructure. Okay, like server, network. So when you talk about infrastructure monitoring, if you take an example of a server, you need to monitor its memory usage, CPU usage, disk space, right? So a network bandwidth, I/O, and all those things. So these are infrastructure related monitoring, okay, which is mostly done by operation, mostly taken care by the operations team. The next part is application monitoring. So the application that you are deploying, okay, onto the server, how is it performing? Is it up and running? Is it down? Okay, is it opening too many files? A database connection? How are the database connections? Okay, these comes in the application monitoring section. Okay, and these are two types of monitoring actually, where the monitoring is divided into. So whenever you get an request to automate some monitoring, you need to be sure, you need to ask them, it's an infrastructure monitoring or application monitoring. Okay, application means whatever application that you deploy, you have to monitor that application. Okay, let's say you deployed a Java web application, so you need to monitor that Java web application. Okay, let's take an example of that game of life artifact that you deployed on Tomcat server. So you need to monitor that application. Is it up and running or not? The Tomcat service, is it working or not? Is it opening too many files, Java processes, and all those things. Okay. Now there are different types of monitoring models. Okay, so it will sound similar to you. Okay, because configuration management also is, works in similar fashion. So there is polling and there is listening. So and then there is hybrid. So polling means there is an agent that you installed on servers. So you have hundreds of servers, you'll have some agent. Let's say it's Nagios agent, which is called as NRP. Okay. Now, what in polling thing, agent is going to go and talk to the server and give its status, that this is my status for a particular interval. Okay, we'll talk about intervals. Okay, so it will go there. I'm sorry. Yeah. So so Nagios server is going to run some check, and the agent is going to send the queries back. So it's gonna the server is going to pull everything, all the logs, okay, all the information by running some scripts. Okay. The next one is listening, where the Nagios server, or let's take example of any monitoring server, is not going to run any checks. Okay, it's going to simply listen. So the agent is going to just send the result, and the server is going to just listen and will not run or execute anything. Okay, mostly as SNMP monitoring tool or network monitoring tool works like that, listening. Mostly you will see polling, and there is hybrid, so it can do polling and it can be also a listening. So Nagios can be polling, listening, or hybrid. Okay, it can be any of those. Okay, so these are different types of monitoring models. All right. Threshold, you hear this a lot, this word thresholds, that this is the threshold you should set, that is the threshold, you should remove, change the threshold. So what threshold is? So there are levels of severity. Okay, if anybody here worked on system administration or monitoring, you will be aware of these things. So normal operation, where nothing is going wrong, everything is working absolutely fine. Okay, memory, resources, CPU, disk space, application is up and running, everything is good. Okay, so you see all green in your monitoring tools. Okay, that's a normal operation. Now there is warning. So I'll take an example of a disk space. So let's say you have 100 GB of disk space, 100 GB of disk, and let's say you have set threshold that if it goes above 70%, then send a warning. If it goes above 80%, sends a critical warning. Critical alert. Okay. If it's below 70%, it's going to be normal operation. If it's going to be above 70%, it's going to be a warning. Okay, if it's above 80%, it's critical. So these thresholds comes by default, but you may need to tweak it according to your requirements. Okay, so when you set up any monitoring agent or any plugin or something like that through automation or manually, you can make all those changes. Okay, we'll see those things, how to change those things. Right, and then there is offline, where server doesn't get any data. Okay, it's not able to perform the check. Okay, we will talk about offline later. It could be a problem with network down, or the server itself is down. Okay, so these are different levels of severity, and these are called as thresholds. Okay, now intervals. So we talked about polling and listening. So how often these checks should be executed, how often it should not get executed. Okay, when some particular situation occurs, when some service is returning critical or something like that, how many times should you check? So these are intervals. Okay, see, at any given point of time, it's going to be some scripts or some binary files which will get executed in a scheduled manner. Okay, let's say 5 minutes or 10 minutes, something like that, or 1 minute, or every seconds. Okay, so you need to define that, if, for example, how many times do we try before declaring a host or service dead. So you get in threshold, you get offline. Okay, so when did it declare that this particular service or server is offline? So it checks, let's say it's going to check a service or a host. Okay, that a host is up or down. So maybe there is a network fluctuation, and it checks that the host status, and it finds that the host is not responding, so it simply cannot declare it as dead. Okay, it needs to check few more times to be sure that a particular service is dead. So these intervals you can define. Okay, so how many times do I check if a service is not responding? Let's say there is a network fluctuation, so every 1 or 2 minutes the network is coming up and down. So your server may be up and running, okay, but your network may be fluctuating. So your host is not down there really. The network is fluctuating. Okay, so you need to be sure on that front. So that's why these intervals are there. And how often do we recheck the dead service? Now we declared the service is dead. Okay, now let's say there was 5 times that it is going to check, and after 5 times it did not respond, declared as dead. Now performing some maybe some network downtime or something like that, and the service is up, okay, or the connection is good. Now the Nagios server or any monitoring server has to recheck it, okay, at some point to see if the service is still dead or it has come up, okay, because that should be a single source of truth for you, right? So you have to rely on that. So let's say after every 10 minutes go and check it again that if it's up or not, okay. So as soon as it comes up, it's going to show green that the server is up now, okay. So that was when if there is something wrong, right? If everything is working fine, right, all the services and servers are working fine, so how often do you normally check the host operating system or service? You check it regularly, like every minute, even if the service is good. If you're doing that, then you're putting too much load on the network. So if the service is good, okay, normal, the severity is normal, then you have to be let's say check it after 5 minutes. Don't check it every 1 minute. If the service is down, okay, if it's not responding, then check it every minute and send a notification. Okay, so these are some strategies that anyways monitoring team is going to define, but you should be aware of these things, because you may need to automate some process and you may need to ask the right question. Okay, so how often do I check the normal operating system or service, right? And how often do you send out notifications? So the main purpose, once the monitoring is done, it should send a notification that the service is running, or it's down, or there's a warning or a critical. Now if it's checking regularly, okay, so it's gonna send notification regularly. If a service is up and running, everything is fine, and it's still sending notification again and again, it's gonna be a big problem. Okay, you'll have a lot of emails. So you need to define that if the service is good, normal operations, don't send notification, just send it once, done. And then if it's down, then send it maybe every minute or every 5 minutes. Okay, so these are some intervals. We call it intervals that you can define in the configuration files. Okay, so every monitoring tool, whenever you set up an agent or anything, you have options to change all these parameters. Okay, a notification, really, right? So who gets notified? So in most of the organization, there would be monitoring team who will get notifications continuously. Okay, so that's not really much of a concern. There is something called as pager calls, SMSs. Okay, so your monitoring tools can be interlinked with some other tools like PagerDuty. There is a tool called PagerDuty, which literally calls on your phone saying that a particular service is not responding or dead or it's a normal operation. Okay, so you can integrate that PagerDuty server, okay, with your let's say Nagios server. So if there is anything wrong, okay, if the service is down or if there's too much of memory usage, so it can also send an email, it can also give you a call on your cell phone. Okay, so all these policies, they'll define it, and there's going to be escalations. Like if one person does not answer the phone, then it should go to the next level. If that person should not answer, it should go to the next level. Okay, so these are some escalation policies also. Okay, not too much of a worry for you guys, okay, but just to be aware, okay, that such kind of thing works. Okay, you can get a call, okay, and you can acknowledge the problems also, right? So you stop getting notification. So whenever a monitoring happens, there are two types of dependencies. Okay, see, monitoring happens from an server, let's say Nagios server, and there could be hundreds of nodes. They all will be connected through the network. Okay, now there are two dependencies to give you a normal operation or to complete a health check. Okay, the one is going to be the reachability. Okay, reachability because it has to go travel through the network, reach your nodes, run some scripts, get the result, and come back. Okay, so this reachability can be a problem sometimes. As I already told you, there could be network fluctuations sometimes. Okay, there could be some switch or router that is down, okay, or some network path that is down. So your check doesn't even get performed, okay, and it declares that it's offline. All right, and the other dependency is service checking. After you're able to reach, okay, then the processor daemon should get executed and run those services and return you the right result. Okay, so these are two types of dependency. You have to satisfy both to complete a monitoring. Okay, if you set up a monitoring server which doesn't have a network connection to the target node, then it's of no use. Okay, if you set up a monitoring server with nodes, everything, but the service checks or daemon is not running, or service checks are returning wrong result, so this sometimes you write your own scripts, your own plugins. Okay, sorry, not scripts, plugins, which performs the checks. If that is not returning a right result, then that's a problem. Okay, so these two types of dependency has to be satisfied to complete a monitoring infrastructure. Okay, right, should be something like this. Okay. Right. So those are some monitoring principles or jargons that you should be aware whenever you're working with a monitoring team. This is a Nagios architecture. Okay, Nagios is a very famous monitoring tool. I've been using it from a very long time. Till date, it is used. If it's not used directly, there are some other tools like Groundworks, Icinga. You'll hear some more tools which in heart would be running a Nagios engine, which is going to run all the checks and all those things, and the other two just give you a better UI. Okay, so so Nagios daemon, sorry, not daemon, it's daemon. Right. So Nagios daemon. So in daemon is a service in Linux, right, which runs in the background, okay, and responds to the user request or client request. So there is a Nagios daemon, or we also call as core daemon service, which is running in the background, that actually performs the scheduled checks. So you have defined all the intervals that the monitoring checks should get executed every minute. So it will read those schedules and it will process the result. It will execute some scripts and it will process some result. Now service checks are totally different from Nagios daemon or core daemon. Okay, we'll talk about it, how it is different. Okay. So Nagios daemon is going to read the configuration files, as I told, what are the intervals, what are the checks that needs to be performed, what are the servers, what are the services that I need to check. Okay, it's going to read all the configuration files and then going to execute it and report everything and save everything into a database. There will be a database where it's going to save all the information, okay, the current state and everything. Okay, there's going to be a log file for Nagios or most of the monitoring tool. If you just do a tail -f and the log file path, you can see monitoring happening in real time. You will see that Nagios is going to that server, running these checks, returning, and has returned that much of results. Okay, this is running, this is offline, and so on. So you can see all those things in the log file. Okay, what is happening currently. But it doesn't just keep in the log file, it stores into the database because it has to show it to the UI or and some API request may come. Okay, so it should be there in the database. Whenever the state changes, then only it's going to change that data in the database. Okay, this is going to be retention database. Okay, right. So we'll talk about plugin in a while. Okay, so concept of state. Okay, so soft state and hard state. First, let me tell you this. So as we discussed, in interval, how often do I recheck to declare a particular service or server is dead? So let's say if I check, if the service happens, service check happens once and it finds that it is dead. Okay, but it's not going to declare it as completely dead. Okay, this is a soft state. Okay, you need to be sure that it is dead. So we do rechecking. So Nagios server will automatically do rechecking. Okay, so let's say after 5 check, declare it as dead. Now when it's after the recheck, it declares that it's definitely dead, then that is a hard state. Okay, a soft state, it could be fluctuating, we're not sure. Okay, we just checked it once. Okay, it's down, but it could be up also. Okay, so that's a soft state. When it's definitely sure that after multiple checks it's not responding, it's a dead. Okay, that's a hard state. All right. Now host states and service states. So hosts can have different states. Okay, which you'll see in the UI and all those things, and also in the emails, that a server is down. Okay, host means any server. Okay, a server is not responding. Maybe it's power off or unreachable. It could be anything. So it's down means not all responding. Okay, it could be powered off. Okay, and the next state is unreachable. So the server, the check is not. So let's say you're sending a ping request. It's not even able to reach till the server. It's failing at some router or switch or some network cable somewhere. So you're not even able to reach to the network where the host is there. So that is unreachable. Okay, the problem is going to be definitely going to be with the network whenever you see unreachable. So whenever you see state unreachable, that means there's problem with the network. Okay. A recovery. So a server comes down. So remember again, in the interval we have defined how often do I recheck the dead service. So there is a hard state. Okay, a server is down. Right now, you need to again check it after some interval of time, and you find that the service, so server, US in server, okay, server finds that it's coming up back, so it will declare it as recovery. Okay, that the server is coming up, it's recovering, so after some time it will become ready and the normal check or operations will continue. Okay, that's a recovery state. Flapping is again related to network most of the time. Okay, I have seen one case where the interface was the problem, the server's interface, but most of the time it's going to be network. So network is coming up and down. You have huge network congestion, not able to reach to the server. It's sometimes you're able to reach, sometimes you're not able to reach. So that's a flapping state. Okay, so it will show you on the screen or on the email that it's flapping. So you need to figure out what the problem is. Okay, these are host state, the state of the server. Now there are services. Right, that the checks gets performed for memory, CPU, disk space, application monitoring, Tomcat services. Right, so so different states gonna be a few of them you already seen. Okay, like warning and threshold. Right, you already know. You set the threshold and declares that there's a warning. That means it crossed the warning threshold. Okay, unknown. I'll come to there. 1 minute, 1 second. Critical, you already know. Again, you set one more threshold above warning, that critical, you have to do something now or something really bad is going to happen. That's where you set a critical. Okay, recovery, again similar to a host. If the service is down and just started coming up back, so let's say Tomcat service, it takes a while to come up properly. Okay, so let's say after 5 check it declared is Tomcat service is dead. Now the Tomcat service has started coming up back, so it will after 5 minute checks, and it sees that the service is up, so it will declare it as recovery. It will make few more checks to make sure that this is the normal operation. Okay, flapping is similar to host again, where the service is flapping, the service is coming up and down. Okay, sometimes that happens. Okay, the service gets comes down, and there would be I'm not sure if you heard this or not, there is a tool called Monit. Okay, the purpose of Monit is to check if the service is up and running. If the service is not running, it simply starts that service. Okay, this is a small piece of software. Okay, very lightweight. You can have some schedules inside that. So why I'm telling you about this is because I used it for one of the project, and because of that, one service was actually in a critical state. It was not coming up, and we start the service, it goes down. I mean, we as in the Monit service, Monit agent was trying to start the service, and there's a problem, it comes down, and this was happening like every 1 or 2 minutes. Okay, so Monit was checking every minute, service is down, and just trying to bring it up. So because of that, because of this, what is happening, the service is broken, and Monit is trying to restart it again, start it again and again, and we saw there is a flapping in the dashboard. So the service was coming up, then going down, coming up, and then going down. So Monit was bringing it up. Okay, so at that point it was showing flapping. Okay, so there could be many reasons. Service automatically comes up or down. Okay, so that time you can see the service status flapping. Okay, unknown. I'll tell you. I told you. I'll come later. So, yeah, I'll talk about unknown. So now there is a Nagios daemon which is going to read the configuration file, run the checks. Okay, so what are these checks? Where are these checks located? Okay, so these checks are nothing but in Nagios terminology we call it as plugin. Okay, this is going to be plugin to check memory. This is going to be plugin to check CPU. This is going to be plugin to check hard disk. This is going to be plugin to check Tomcat service. This is going to be plugin to check n number of services in the world or infrastructure. There's going to be plugin to check routers and switches. So these plugins are nothing but some binary files or some script. Okay, most of them comes with the package, with the Nagios package itself, and some you have to download from the internet. Let's say so you have to download from the internet, some you have to write by your own. Okay, I'll give you an example. So let's say now you got a new project, right? And everything is, you have set up, everything is working. You're going to set monitoring. You set up the monitoring. You have to monitor the infrastructure and you have to monitor the application. So infrastructure monitoring plugin is already there. Most of them would be already there, monitoring disk space and all those things, right? Now you find out you're going to use a service called as let's say it's a new service, MongoDB. Okay, you need to be sure that MongoDB service is up and running, and it should not go out of the resources and all those things. And you find out that there is no such plugin which it came with the Nagios package. You have a lot of downloaded Nagios package, set up everything, but there is no such plugin. So you check the World Wide Web, internet, right? You go to the Wild West, you find out that there is some MongoDB plugin available. You download it, okay, you install it, you set it up, and then you have a MongoDB plugin. Fine. Now developer writes some application, its own custom application, okay, that needs to be monitored. All right. Now Nagios doesn't provide, obviously will not provide your own custom application. Nagios is not aware of that. You won't be able to find those things on the internet also. So you have to write your own plugin. Okay. Now these plugins can be a script. Okay. This has to be script all the time. Okay. It could be a bash script, Python script, which returns some result. Okay, the result which is readable by Nagios. Okay, it's going to be very simple. It returns either OK or warning or critical. That's all. So there should be a script that get executed which checks your application, whether it's up and running or flapping or unreachable, whatever it is, and then return the state to the Nagios server. So these are different types of different types of ways you use plugins. Most of the time, you would be using Nagios plugin itself. You will download a lot of plugins. For Nagios, there are thousands of plugins. So like for Jenkins, you have thousands of plugins. For Ansible, there are hundreds of modules. It's similar to that. Okay. Here, the plugins is gonna be a script or a binary file with checks, which runs the checks and returns the result. Okay. Now. Unknown, right? Service state unknown. So what happens when you write your own script, okay, and you don't know what result to return, okay? Because Nagios will read some exit codes and will return OK, warning, something like that. But if you return something else which Nagios does not understand, okay, that time you're going to get service status unknown. Okay, there is a network connectivity, check is performing very well, the script is getting executed, but the result that Nagios is getting is, Nagios is not able to read that, so it will declare it as unknown. I'm not aware what is this. Okay, that's a warning state. Alright, so plugin is a separate package than Nagios core. Once we download and set up all those things, we'll see that it's a separate package altogether. Okay, config files, will deal with config files. The configuration files are plain text files. This is the place where you define which checks get executed and what is the threshold, warning, critical, right? Intervals, all those things will be defined in config files. Okay. Log files, I already told you, right? You can see in real-time monitoring in the log file, you have to do just tail-f. It's a Linux command actually, which reads a file, even if you put some new content, -f flag is going to show it to you real time on your screen. Okay, Nagios, you get an interface, web interface. Okay, to be very frank, Nagios web interface is not that great. Okay, that's why there are some other tools, which gives you very nice UI and which uses Nagios internally, like Groundworks, Icinga, and few other Xenos. Once you install, you just hit the IP address /Nagios or your server name /Nagios, and you get the interface. Okay, we'll see that. Right. Few configuration files before we delve into the installation and all those things. There's a nagios.cfg files. Okay, and cgi.cfg. Okay, I'll get confused too much. Let's go into doing this real time. Okay, there's going to be a few configuration files which we'll talk about after the installation. Okay, nagios.configuration file and few other configuration files. Okay, so first let's set up Nagios server. Just a moment. I'm sorry guys, there is an emergency, I need to leave. I'll meet you tomorrow. Sorry about that. You'll get the documents.
Hope everything is alright, Imran.
Sorry?
Hope everything is alright with you. It's okay, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay. And also, right, Saturday's class also, if you could, send the document, that would be great.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.